So while working offshore, this little story was 2007, and I was working on a vessel in the North Sea called the Geco Triton, and it was for a company called Schlumberger. We got offered another job down in Western Australia, and this time it was on a vessel called the Geco Eagle. They were working in the Coral Sea, and I was offered the job as a paramedic. So absolutely phenomenal. So anyway, flew across to Australia with most of the crew from the Geco Triton. The captain, his name was also Colin, a little Scottish guy, a really, really nice guy. And him and I got on really well. And so he requested for me to continue to be his paramedic. And I was totally blown away. So a couple of weeks later, after that, we flew into Australia, and we flew into Brisbane. Now, this was my first time going into Australia and experiencing Australian customs. And I can say without a doubt that they're the biggest shower of bastards, cheeky bastards on the planet when you enter a country. Back then, I was really big into my fitness, as I still am now, and I remember taking down some protein powder, 2 big buckets of protein powder, and also a giant bucket of creatine. I couldn't get the buckets into my bag, so I took the protein powder out and the creatine, and I put it into triple ziplocked 2-kilogram bags, and I put it into my bag, into my belongings, and covered it with some clothes. Now I had basically, I would say 6 to 8 kilograms of protein powder in bags, and I didn't really stop to think that it looked like bags of drugs. Obviously, with the protein powder being a vanilla, it was kind of off color, a yellowy color, and also the creatine was pure white. So I had basically 2 kilos of creatine in Ziploc bags. Flew into Australia, got into customs, waited in line to walk down to get our bags and to be put through the scanner. And my bag goes through the scanner. It had my name on it, and Colin Gibson had my name on it. It was a red and blue bag with Schlumberger wrote on it. And I stood there, still kind of unbeknownst to me that there'd be any problems. Phil didn't fill in the paperwork to say that I was bringing in food. So for me, it was just a drink. But Australian customs classify it as a food, so I didn't fill it in on the little registration form that they ask you bringing anything in. So bag goes through, and there's a big Maori guy. He must have been about 6'4", 6'5", big bodybuilder type rugby player dude, and he says, "Is this your bag?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Can you grab it and bring it over here?" So anyway, I grabbed the bag and take it over here, and he says to me, "Is there anything in there you need to tell me about?" And I was like, no. He goes to me, "Are you sure?" I was like, "Yeah." And he says, "Okay." He says, "Can you open it up for me?" So anyway, I opened up the bag, and he says, "Can you take them clothes off?" And then all of a sudden, I looked into the bag and kind of realized that it just looks like fucking drugs. Looks like heroin and cocaine. And my jaw just hit the floor. And I knew that he knew what it was, because this guy was a big dude. He worked out stuff, and he goes, "What is that?" And I says, "Okay." I says, "The white powder is creatine." And I says, "And the other 3 pouches," I said, is protein powder." And he says, "Why have you got it in Ziploc bags?" And I says, "I couldn't get the buckets into my bag." I said, "So I just put it in Ziploc bags." And he just looked at me, and he just stared He just stared through me. He had eyes, black eyes like a shark, and he just stares at me. This guy's looking down at me, and I'm kind of like looking up at him, and I just was like, oh fuck. And he says to me, "Did you declare this on your entry form?" And I said, "No." And he goes, "Well, you're bringing a foreign substance." And he goes, "You're bringing a food in." And I said, "That's not a food, that's a drink." And he goes, "It's food." I said, "It's a drink." So I kind of got into this, not an argument with him, but I didn't realize that they classed it as foods anyway. So he could have done me for carrying drugs or whatever, or had it tested, or took me to one side, but basically they fined me 450 Australian dollars for bringing a food in, okay, and not declaring it. And they were going to basically just put me on a plane and send me back to the UK. The captain, Colin, interjected and said, "This guy is the medic on our ship." And we don't care. He didn't follow rules, all this type of stuff. And I said, "I'm sorry." I says, "I didn't realize, I said, I didn't, realize you classed it as a food." And so he just, goes off on a tangent. I should have known this, and I should have followed the rules, and I should have looked things up, and I should have been more certain. And so we were working for a company down there called Woodside. And Woodside is a massive company, and they have the biggest union in Australia. So this guy was giving me shit. He was, a couple of his, a couple more of his work colleagues came over, and they're interjecting and they're pointing fingers, and they looked through my bags, and of course they found some little info drives and asked me, was I carrying any pornography, and all this type of stuff. And I says, "Listen, it's all medical. I'm the ship's medic. It's all the paperwork. It's all patient, report forms." And he says, "Well, we're going to check these." And I says, check away. And, I said, "There's no porn on it at all." I said, "It's just, they looked for every excuse, every excuse to basically get me angry and push me further and further into an argument with them, so they could basically just probably turn around and arrest me and ship me back out again. But the captain came basically to my rescue and pointed out that I was the medic, that he was the skipper or the master of the vessel, and that if the vessel didn't sail, then Woodside would be not happy about it at all. Because when Woodside, when they basically pull the pin with the union, everything stops. Everything stops. The job would have just grounded to a halt. Probably hundreds of millions of dollars would have been lost. We were on a seismic vessel working in the Coral Sea, or would have been, which meant the vessel I was working on was responsible for finding any oil fields through the technology that they trail at the back of the seismic vessels. Obviously, there would be no medic for the med center and so forth. No HSE would have been able to be done toolbox talks or anything, to be checked before the work commenced. It was just a massive clusterfuck. Anyway, the immigration guys calmed down. They fined me for $450, I think, as far as 450 Australian dollars, and basically told me that the next time I bring anything in, to make sure that it remained in the sealed tubs, and to buy an extra bag, extra luggage, and to not be as mouthy to immigration. So eventually we got out, we got on the vessel after a couple of days of staying in Perth, being drugs tested, piss tested, and then from Perth we flew to Barrow, I think it was Barrow Island, and then we helicoptered offshore, and we spent 3 months up there doing seismic vessel investigation and stuff. So that was my first experience going into Australia. I had several more experiences going into Australia on vacation, basically as a scuba diver, and they were just fucking really are cheeky bastards. They take everything to the extreme, and I enjoyed being on Australia. I enjoyed the friends I made, but Australian immigration can go fuck themselves and need to go back to college and learn how to speak to people with manners. Australia's a great place. I wouldn't live there. Went down there 6 times working for oil companies, and just going into the country was just fucking dog shit, to be honest. Went down there to make money, obviously, and couldn't wait to leave. So yeah, Australia, whoop whoop.